When Moses sent the 12 spies to see the land of Canaan, what it looked like, they came back with a good report that the land was very good. But they had no hope of conquering it because of the particular nature of one of its inhabitants, whom they described as the sons of Anak. Who were they? Why were they afraid of them? And how did they eventually exterminate them from the land? According to the Bible, there were 3 sons of Anak. Probably they were 3 tribes that descended from this great Anak, and they were prominent for their unusual heights and stature. And they ascended by the south, and came unto Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai were the 3 children of Anak. Probably at this time they must have grown into kindreds or cities. They were the major inhabitants of Hebron, a land that Caleb would later possess. Some of these men would later become part of the Philistines, from where Goliath came from. When the spies came back, they expressed their fear and told the people of Israel about these people. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Though these people might have exaggerated what they saw, because they were already afraid of going into the land. From their description, they were like grasshoppers compared to these men, that would be over 1,000 ratio. From the picture the Bible gave us about Goliath, we can say that these men were about the same height as Goliath, since Goliath can be traced to the sons of Anak. Goliath was about 9 feet tall, according to the Bible. The height of these tall race terrified the spies that their spirit melted, and they gave up their desire for the land. They were ready to quit. They doubted God immediately, and the fear spread in the entire camp. Was it not for God's intervention, they would have stoned Joshua and Caleb, who tried to encourage them that they were able through God to possess the land. These giants have nothing to do with the giants in Genesis 6, who were a product of unnatural union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Those perished in the flood. The sons of Anak were purely human that came from the lineage of Arba, the father of Anak, who was an unusually tall man and of a high stature. They were exceptionally tall race. For fear of these men, the children of Israel would not go into the land of promise. They cried all night, regretted why they even left Egypt the first place, and blamed Moses as usual. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, Let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. They were ready to return to Egypt. Their imagination began to play a fast one on them. They prefer the bondage of Egypt to facing these sons of Anak. They agreed to make a captain among themselves, who will lead them back to Egypt. And the Lord was angry with them. A divine verdict was issued. Was it not for the prompt intercession of Moses, the Lord was ready to do away with them and smite them as one man. But the consequences for their unbelief will be that none of them that were adults will enter the land. They will roam the wilderness for 40 years, until they were all dead, and then their children, whom they said will become prey, will possess the land. They had extended the promise of God for another 40 years because of their unbelief and fear. After 40 years, the new generation moved into the land and conquered the people of Anak. For the Lord hardened their hearts and caused them to fight the Israelites instead of asking for peace. So they were completely and mercilessly destroyed, as the Lord had commanded Moses. During this period, Joshua destroyed all the descendants of Anak, who lived in the hill country of Hebron, Debir, Anab, and the entire hill country of Judah and Israel. He killed them all and completely destroyed their towns. The Lord will not want them to be spared, or for his people to make peace with them. They will corrupt his people. He hardened their heart, and they fought and were destroyed. Some of them were driven out. They could not stand the people of God. Caleb drove out the 3 Anakites, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai, descendants of Anak. After they were conquered and driven out, some of them went and settled around the neighboring city. Some of them joined the Philistines, and that was where Goliath and his brothers would be found many decades later. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod there remained. They were part of the people that made the armies of the Philistines so strong. Goliath will come out of Gath and become a terror to the entire army of Saul, but the Lord will kill him through a young boy called David. After David became king, they dealt with the Philistines, and the brother of Goliath would also be killed by one of the men of David. This was how the terrific generation of the Anak ended. God has no problem with their size. He made them so. The only problem the Lord had with them was that they allowed their stature to blind them and fill their heart with pride. They did not acknowledge God, and they chose to serve idols. The words of Goliath gave us an idea of how proud they were. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was a giant of a man, measuring over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet and a coat of mail that weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leggings, and he slung a bronze javelin over his back. The shaft of his spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. An armor-bearer walked ahead of him, carrying a huge shield. Goliath stood and shouted across to the Israelites, "Do you need a whole army to settle this? Choose someone to fight for you, and I will represent the Philistines. We will settle this dispute in single combat. If your man is able to kill me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel. Send me a man who will fight with me." And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, "Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The height of stature does not matter before the Lord, only the heart does. The heart is the basis by which the Lord transacts with men. Faith in God is more powerful than the heights and stature of flesh. Like Joshua and Caleb, they also saw the giants and the wall. Beside that, they saw the Lord God who was with them. They saw the greatness and power of God. They knew that the power that brought down Pharaoh and subdued the forces of Egypt will conquer the giants for them. They understood that the same power that parted the Red Sea for them will also bring the high walls down. They saw the height and stature of the Most High, and that was their victory. What you see in the midst of challenges determines your victory, and your seeing is your choice. May the Lord open our eyes to always see His power and glory above the challenges we face.